Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our webinar this morning, our very first webinar as our South Australian AOD Community of Practice. I'd just like to start today by acknowledging that I am on the lands of the Kaurna people today and express my respect to Kaurna elders past and present, and extend that respect to the traditional owners of wherever you might be dialing in from today. I know we've got people from all across Australia. And also to acknowledge that the land I'm on today was not ceded, it was stolen, and acknowledge the ongoing harm that our history of colonisation does to our First Nations people, resulting in overrepresentation in our services and in our justice system. I'd also like to acknowledge anyone joining us today with a living experience of either drug and alcohol issues or domestic, family and sexual violence. And just to acknowledge the contribution that people with lived experience make to our services and our service provision are incredibly valuable. Welcome today, as I mentioned, our first webinar as a South Australian AOD Community of Practice. I will put some more information in the chat a little bit later about how, if you work in drug and alcohol in South Australia, you might be interested in joining our community of practice. Just to let you know that this webinar is being recorded today. And a link will be shared following the end of the session, so that other people who couldn't make it today can access this afterwards. If you have questions as we're going along today, please use the Q&A function, as we will kind of put them all together as we're going and ask questions towards the end of the session. So without further ado, I'll introduce our first speaker. Our first speaker today is Carolyn Bateman, Regional Services Manager from No to Violence. I can see you there, Carolyn. Carolyn will be providing an introduction to No to Violence and a brief overview of some of its services. So I'll hand over to you, Carolyn.
Thank you, Sam. Let me start sharing. Oh, hang on. Sorry. Okay, share.
Great.
All right, hopefully you can see that. Thank you. Thanks again for having me, for inviting me. So I'm going to start by giving you an overview of No to Violence and then also the services that we offer. I'd like to thank Sam for her acknowledgement, and I'll say Wallawani from the people on the south coast of New South Wales, where I live, work and play on these unceded lands. At No to Violence, we also value equity, diversity and inclusion. We embrace and celebrate people from all backgrounds, including Aboriginal, Torres Strait Islander people, people of colour, culturally diverse people, members of the LGBTIQA+ communities and people living with a disability. And our work is very much centred around victim survivors. And so we acknowledge the bravery of victim survivors who have had the courage to come forward and share their experiences, as well as those who have not been able to. And we acknowledge the importance of their contributions to the work that we do. So No to Violence is Australia's peak body for ending the gendered nature of family violence. Our vision is to have a world free from male violence, and our values are gender equity, leadership, change and accountability. We are a pro-feminist organisation, and we acknowledge the gendered nature of family violence. The safety of women and children is central to what we do, and their voices must be heard and elevated. A man's use of violence is a choice, and men need to take responsibility for their behaviours and choices. We acknowledge that all women, men and children can be adversely affected by family violence, and the definition of family includes same-sex relationships and mixed or blended families. And we are committed to demonstrating diversity in our organisation. So the work we do, we have our policy research and advocacy branch section. So their work is very much working with both family domestic violence sector and the intersection with AOD, mental health, racism, called communities-based communities. And so we, the Advocacy, Policy and Research help to create policies that might inform governments and to support the sector in the work, and of course research. We have our workforce development team, and their focus is on providing training to the workforce. So that can be anything from sort of a one-on-one training for practitioners who work in sort of the intersection with family domestic violence, through to we also have a graduate certificate that we deliver with Swinburne in case management focused on men's behaviour change. We have our sector development team. This is most active in New South Wales, where we're funded to provide the Men's Behaviour Change Network and facilitate that. And then we also provide services, and these include the Men's Referral Service and the Brief Intervention Service, which are our national services. They're the ones I'm going to speak to today. There are quite a number of services that we also operate in Victoria and Tasmania, but I won't speak to them because the relevance isn't as, the relevance to South Australia isn't there. So the Men's Referral Service, which is operated by No to Violence, it is our 24/7 phone and online chat. So we have counsellors that are based nationally everywhere, except for the Northern Territory. We haven't been able to recruit from the Northern Territory. And so who do we support? Obviously, men choosing to use family violence, family members who may be impacted by family violence. So I was actually on the phone this morning and took a phone call from a 61-year-old man impacted by his brother's choice to use family violence, and concerned also for the financial abuse that's being used against their mother. Friends, family or colleagues of people using family violence, and professionals wishing to support a client. Just to speak to that one a little bit, the secondary consultations that we can provide are very broad. So we can't sort of participate in case management with a practitioner, but it may be around some tips around some skills that could be used, or it may be talking about what other referral pathways there may be for them to look at. Our counselling principles are that, we don't know what it takes for a man to pick up the phone and call us that day. So we want to provide a very non-judgmental and respectful communication, modelling the behaviours we're hoping to for the man to choose. We are curious and invitational. We definitely work with that gendered lens. So many of the men who contact us do have a victim stance and a victim narrative, and we will gently explore that and work with that to sort of, really unpack what's been going on. But the importance of doing that is, of course, not to be collusionary or confrontational, because we're then entering, his field of expertise, which is power and control. We want to create that space for critical reflection, holding the mirror up for the man to look at what his behaviours look like to those that he is impacting. And of course, meeting the man where he's at. So if we can give that, if we can achieve all of that, what we hope is that his next step then will be an easier one for him to contact a men's behaviour change program, a counselling or AOD, whatever it may be. So our common referral pathways are men's behaviour change programs, and these include those being run by First Nations and COLT programs, legal aid or mediation. We're a bit cautious with the mediation, but of course most family, I can speak for family relationship centres, they run a very stringent assessment process where they will really look at whether there is a power imbalance that can be managed before they enter mediation. Family violence crisis intervention services, and these can include housing, general and financial counselling, suicide services, alcohol and other drugs, and fathering and parenting. There are also a whole heap more of referrals that we provide, but these are the most common ones that we do. So referring to the Men's Referral Service, so we have our national open line number. We also have the No to Violence chat. So men can be anonymous, and so in the chat they can just click the anonymous box. It is helpful if we know a state or if they can give us a suburb, so that when we send a referral, we usually send it via SMS. But we can talk to the man about that. And we also have a list of all the men's behaviour change programs on our website. And on the website are the referral forms for the brief intervention service that I'll speak to you about next, and also some services that we run in Victoria. So that's the gist of the men's referral service. I'm going to move on to the brief intervention service, also known as BIS. So the funding for BIS came about during COVID, and with the idea of a man being able to work with the same counsellor over the phone for 10 to 12 sessions, you know, to sort of hold him while there was the men's behaviour change programs were not able to run. What we found, though, is that there are not enough men's behaviour change programs, or there may be many reasons why a man is unable to access a program or be accepted into a program. So we're able to work with men who cannot physically get to a men's behaviour change program. We can also work with interpreters to provide the service. So for men who need that interpreter, we can do that. And we can also work with men who we would describe in the stage of change as pre-contemplative. And so 10 to 12 sessions to work with him to prepare him for readiness, hopefully, to get into a men's behaviour change program. So they're the men that we can work with. The telephone sessions are usually 30 minutes to 45 minutes long, usually provided weekly. The service does run 7 days a week and operates from 9 a.m. till about 8 p.m. So we can be a bit more flexible in providing men who are working with phone appointments. And the program provides that focused specialist men's family violence counselling, and of course referrals as required with that. So basically, to be suitable for the program, the man just needs to be willing to engage in a conversation around their use of violent or abusive behaviour. He doesn't need to yet be in the contemplative stage, so as I said. Where there's access barriers to men's behaviour change or counselling for men living in remote and regional areas. As I said, the called community access, so we can work with interpreters. Men may be referred from an external service, such as corrections, and men seeking to be the best version of themselves through that respectful interaction and non-violence as a choice for themselves, their intimate partner, and their family. So we call it a telehealth model. Basically, it's phone counselling. We have the feminist lens. We look at the trans-theoretical model, that stage of change, using modalities such as motivational interviewing and narrative therapy, particularly, building that rapport so that the man can feel vulnerable to be able to reflect on his choices, and obviously keeping that lens of the gendered nature of family violence. So the access or referral pathway, men can call the men's referral service, and they will be basically through that conversation, and a referral will be made to the BIS program. It can also be done through our web chat function. or external. On our website there is the referral form for external services such as corrections, police, child protection, and allied family violence services, legal services, etc. So the client journey is that they get the inbound referral. They'll be contacted hopefully within 2 to 3 business days for the intake session, and then they will be put, at the moment we do have a waiting list, so the man will be put on the waiting list. He will be provided with other referral pathways in the meantime. And we sort of do a bit of a triage. If we identify that there's very high risk, we may try to, bump him up the list a little bit. He'll receive weekly sessions for family violence counselling. During those sessions, there will be the needs assessment and referrals, and with the program exit, the where to from here. If they have been referred from an external organisation, there will be a letter of engagement provided. There was something I was going to say about that, and now I've forgotten what it was. Might come back to me. So I will stop sharing. And do we want to open it up for questions now, Sam? Because I know I've sort of whizzed through that, but quite often it can be the conversations that are helpful.
Yeah, for sure. I haven't received any questions come through on the Q&A, so I just encourage people, if they have any questions, pop them use the Q&A function on Teams, and pop them in there, and maybe we'll keep going and come back if we get any other questions. So thank you very much for that, Carolyn. That was very informative. And now I'm going to hand over to Carolyn's colleague at No to Violence, Molly Jones. Molly is a project officer working on a very exciting new project. She's going to tell us about the National Directory of Services for People Who Use Violence. So I'll hand over to Molly.
Thanks, Sam, and thanks, Carolyn, for that very comprehensive overview of all of the work that No to Violence does. I'd just like to say thank you to Sam and to Carolyn for their acknowledgements of country, of diversity, and of lived experience, and I'd like to affirm those acknowledgements myself. I'm going to share my screen and I will talk you through the National Directory of Services project that I am currently working on. So the National Directory of Services for People Who Use Violence is the full name of the project. It's being delivered by No to Violence, but I'm going to start by giving you a bit of the context of the project, the policy and the research context that sits behind it. I'll talk a little bit about No to Violence's role in delivering the project, and I will give you a bit of a walkthrough. And we do have a bit of a cheeky ask for you at the end as well. We'd love your input and your insight as professionals. But you are getting a bit of a sneak peek of it before it launches today, and you'll be able to access it yourselves. All right, so let's have a look at the context. So the National Plan to End Violence Against Women and Children is a 10-year plan, which is kind of the basis of this project. It's the overarching federal government policy framework. It really represents a commitment to ending gender-based violence against women and children in Australia in one generation. So it is significant and ambitious as a plan. And it's really underpinned by the existing evidence base that shows violence against women and children is overwhelmingly perpetrated by men as a manifestation of inequality and discrimination based on gender, race, and other power imbalances. As part of the national plan, a first action plan has been developed. So that action plan is 2023 through to 2027. And it sits under that national plan, and it really sets out how that very ambitious project is going to be achieved via specific actions and collective accountability. So the action plan has 10 action areas, and they're really designed to address the factors that are contributing to violence against women and children. And it sits alongside, there's also a concurrent Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander action plan that sits alongside this action plan. So the establishment of a national directory of services for people using violence is an initiative that sits under that first action plan. It's aligned to Action 5, which focuses on perpetrator accountability. I'm just going to read you what that action actually says. So it says, the action is to strengthen systems and services to better hold people who choose to use violence to account, and provide opportunities to support people who have used violence or are at risk of using violence to change their behaviours, with the aim of protecting the safety and well-being of current and potential victim survivors. So this project specifically, the National Directory of Services for people who choose to use violence, it aims to improve referrals to and uptake of intervention services by people who have chosen to use or are at risk of using violence, ultimately to assist these individuals to change their behaviour, and then even ultimately beyond that, to protect the safety and well-being of current and potential victim survivors. So we're going top and smaller down. So we have this initiative, and then No to Violence is delivering this project via funding from the Department of Social Services. As Carolyn very clearly stated, we are the largest peak body in Australia for organisations and individuals who work with men to end family violence. We also deliver the Men's Referral Service and the Brief Intervention Service, which are also partly funded by DSS. And of course, we are also making our contributions to the sector via advocacy, training, and sector workforce development. Okay, so to the directory itself. So the National Directory is scheduled for launch in mid-May, so still sort of about 2 months, almost 2 months, before it will be officially launched for use. It's going to be integrated into a new look men's referral service website. So it doesn't sit on its own, it sits alongside the other information and resources for the men's referral service. It has been designed to cater to both the needs of professional users, such as yourselves, who may be looking to refer clients, and members of the public who are seeking help for themselves or for somebody that they might be concerned about. Our task at the moment, pre-launch, we've kind of figured out all the usability issues, and we've tested over and over and over again to make sure things work pretty well. But the big kind of push before we do launch is to make sure that our listings are as comprehensive as possible to ensure that we really have adequate coverage across both domestic and family violence services and the relevant allied health services as well. So that's kind of what I'll be asking you to help me with today. But before I do that, I'm going to give you a bit of a walkthrough of what the site looks like. So I'm just going to stop sharing and I'll bring up the site itself. I will do this smoothly and with no issues at all. Okie dokie. Here we go. Okay, so here is the Men's Referral Service website with the National Directory integrated. I'll point out a few little features for you. They won't probably be much of a surprise to you as people who have probably used websites like this before. This will be the home page. This is the landing page. You can see up in the top right corner, we have a quick exit button. Once that's clicked, it takes you to a Google page. And if you click back, it doesn't take you back to the National Directory. For me, it takes me back to, for some reason, the MSN News, which I hate and is very distracting to me. So let's move on. So we have on the homepage a range of different kind of pathways for people, depending on what they need. We have the Men's Referral Service number here, as well as the web chat button here. The web chat button is also down here, so you can open that chat up and speak with a counsellor, as Carolyn pointed out. We have a range of different national helplines, recognising that whilst the site is designed for people who either have chosen to use violence themselves, are concerned about someone in their life who is using violence, or is a professional seeking to refer, we may have users end up on the site who are experiencing family violence themselves. So we're trying to provide a range of different pathways for a range of different potential users. That's why, for example, we have the Full Stop helpline, as well as Kids Helpline and 1-800 Respect, along with 13 Yarn and the men's referral service there. Up the top, you can see we've got our navigational headings, very classic. We've got our home, which will take you back to home. On this side here, we have a day-night toggle. So I keep it on night mode. It's my preference. You can also have it on day mode if you prefer it a bit brighter, but I'm going to take it back to night mode. It's a bit easier on the eyes. So we've got 4 kind of key headings up here. We have Get Help. That provides a bit of an overview of the services that are available for people who are using violence or who are at risk of using violence. We also provide the information in 25 different languages, so translated pages in 25 different languages, as you can see here. And some information about how to access the men's referral service through translating and interpreting service through TIS National. There's information around how to actually search the directory, so sort of how to use it, the functionality of it. There are 3 information pages around the different types of services that you'll find in the National Directory. So family violence specific, community or allied health services, and those inclusive services that are working with specific identities. And then some education around, if you're worried about your behaviour, and some support if you are experiencing family violence. Under the About heading, we have some information about family violence, so some education. We have some information about the men's referral service itself, and then some additional information about the directory. So we're sort of integrating those 3 pieces. Under the For Professionals heading, this will be sort of the stuff that's particularly relevant to you. There's information in here for professionals about note of violence, about the men's referral service, all the things that you might need to know and have questions about. There's a bit of an overview of the services that are included on here, specific resources, as Carolyn said. That's one of the functions that MRS serves, is to support and to guide practitioners who might be needing some additional support in working with people in the space. The last one there is list of service. So something that's come up a lot as we've worked with and sort of spoken to professionals in the space is this real need, absolutely justified, for assurance that what is included on the directory is appropriately vetted and appropriately accredited. So this page, list of service, has all the information around the eligibility criteria and around really what is required for you to be accepted as a listing on the National Directory. I'll just point out here too that obviously, this is a live site. It's not kind of set and forget. We are really looking for users to be supporting us, to be keeping it updated, keeping it current, and letting us know if there are any issues or anything missing. So the first thing I just point out, if you can see something on the directory that's missing, then you just need to email mrsdirectory@ntv.org.au and let us know. If your organisation itself would like to list something, then we have an expression of interest form that gets filled in, comes to the projects team, and we reach out to you and start the process. Okay, so all of that is the lead up to actually having a look at the directory. And here it is. When you first land on the directory, actually what I'll just say is from the homepage, there's kind of 3 pathways to get to the directory. You can either click on Find Services, you can click on Find Services here, or if you scroll to the bottom of the page, you can click on See All Services. When you first land, every service listing is shown in alphabetical order. So currently we've got 333 listed here, and it shows us this list view first, but you can also look at it as a map view. So any service that has a physical location is kind of tagged with one of these red location tags, but if the service is phone or web-based, it will be listed down the side here. And if you click on it, it will just sort of show the tile that you could see in the list page. Then you've got these filters. So obviously you can see everything, and then these filters will help you to kind of narrow down what's shown. The first group here is really looking at states and territories. So you can choose which state and territory you would specifically like to look at. You can also just click on national helplines if you'd like to. The second group here are those kind of inclusive services, so those services which cater to specific identities or cultural needs. One thing I'll point out as a bit of a design feature that came through from user testing was that now any service that is an Aboriginal community controlled organisation or is Aboriginal led now has Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander flags on it, just as that easy visual indicator that something is culturally safe. I'll just take that tag off for the moment. And then the next one down here, you have different types of services. So that will include kind of your allied or sort of relevant services for co-occurring issues, as well as specific services for things like behaviour change and case management. Something that I'll show you very quickly. So if you click on South Australia, for example, obviously it narrows down the number of services for each little category there, and the number should change. You can also use this box here to filter. So if, for example, that's my postcode. If, for example, we look at Port Augusta, you have 2 services that pop up, but you can also expand your radius. So a bit like Facebook Marketplace, you can kind of expand the radius out and it will give you a bigger search, sort of recognizing that that's really important specifically for people living in rural areas, even regional areas, to be able to expand that search out. So we have a 25-kilometre radius, we have a 75, and we have 150 as well. Also, if you click multiple filters, so if we go South Australia, First Nations, and behaviour change, the way that the filter function works is that it will show first those filters, those services where both filters are present. So where you have behaviour change and First Nations, all of these services will be in South Australia only. So behaviour change, First Nations, behaviour change, First Nations, again, they are in alphabetical order. Then what it will show is those services that just have one of the tags. So what we're trying to avoid is people coming on and having lots of filters and then getting nothing. We're trying to make sure that there is at least one sort of pathway that people might be able to follow. So you can see it just goes down to the one filter, and your filter is highlighted in yellow all the time. And if you want to clear one filter, you can just click on it, or you can click on clear all filters to remove it. That's the national directory as it currently looks. The thing that I have to ask you to do today, if possible, oh, that was helpful, wasn't it? Here we go. So my colleague Christine is an attendee, and she's just going to pop the URL into the chat for me, I think, or maybe I'll do it, that's okay. Or you can just use your device and QR code yourself to the national directory. The ask that I have for you today, if possible, is that you try to find your own service and or services that you would expect to be on there. And if you do spot anything that is missing, we would really, really, really appreciate it if you could either pop them in the chat today and we'll follow them up, or just shoot us an email to projects@ntv.org.au. I will also pop the URL in the chat so that you can look at it on your browser if you would prefer. And I think that's me. Thanks, Sam.
Great, thank you, Molly. Yeah, it would be great if we could help with a bit of user testing for the directory. It seems like a great service, and I'm really impressed with the ease of using it. Like, it's very intuitive and seems very easy to use, and that can't always be said of all directory services. You know,
it's very true.
But no, obviously it's been great. So yeah, if people had feedback, please feel free to share that. Just a couple of questions. Someone's asked if we could share a copy of the slides today. I haven't checked that with presenters. I'm assuming that would be okay with Molly. Yep, I'm getting a thumbs up. So yes, we can share some of those slides. There was also a question, I'm assuming, about the men's referral service, if there's a minimum age or acceptance for referrals, and do you have a recommendation for people under 18? Carolyn,
You're happy for me to jump in and answer that?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Great question. Thank you. And I remember to cover this next time. So we are funded, as Molly said, by the Department of Social Services to work with people over the age of 18. And, you know, as you were probably finding in your work, we're getting more and more calls from parents impacted by the violence that their young people are choosing to use. So what we would do is, you know, look on our data system. When the National Directory comes out, we'll be able to look at that too, to find a relevant service. Again, noting that we can't refer the young person, so it may be, you know, actually providing referrals for the parent or the adult calling to provide them with the support that they may need. So I can't sort of give a general, this is where we refer to.
Yeah, no
people.
worries.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thanks, Carolyn. If anyone's got any ideas around services that work with young people in this area, feel free to pop them in the chat. I'd just like now to hand over to Louise Kelly, who is the CEO of Oars Community Transitions. And Louise is going to talk to us today about the Don't Become That Man program.
Thanks, Sam. I too am on Ghana land, so would just like to acknowledge that. Now, I don't have a presentation as such, but I am happy to share information through Sam and whoever's after that later as well. So happy to share some further information. But I wanted to acknowledge that I'm also really grateful to share here about our services this morning within the DV space. So Oars is 140 years old now. We've been delivering services to people in contact with the criminal justice system for that entire time. More specifically, in the last 15 to 20 years, we've had an increased focus in domestic, family and sexual violence, as well as our broader engagement as well with the AOD sector. So domestic and family violence is a devastating issue that tears apart the fabrics of our society, impacting individuals, families and entire communities. And while it's crucial to provide support to victim survivors, as we already know, there's another crucial aspect that's often overlooked, and that's working with the people who are creating the harm, the need to engage and work with the people using violence. So stepping back, widening our gaze at the source of harm, creating real and lasting change, we must address the root cause of the violence, abuse and control, the actions and beliefs of those who perpetrate it, who use that violence and control. So pleased to share that we are on the MRS No Violence Directory, and we do also receive referrals through from both MRS and the Brief Intervention Service as well. So we are South Australian based. The phrase "Don't Become That Man," which is our kind of the encompassing service delivery for our domestic, family and sexual violence services, was developed to encourage and facilitate early intervention and prevention programs for men in particular who are concerned about their controlling behaviour, or even more concerned about the potential for that behaviour to escalate into violence, including lethal violence. Our intention is that this phrase acts as both a prompt and a circuit breaker, encouraging men to reflect on the impact of their behaviour, to recognise potential consequences of losing control, and take the critical first step of reaching out for support. By making that call, they begin a journey of accountability, recovery and change, reducing the risk of harm and building safer futures for themselves and those around them. So the main referral options are open. The easiest way to get in contact is through our phone line, which is above my head there. We also have web chats options on the Don't Become That Man website. So our service is open Monday to Friday, 2 until 7 p.m, acknowledging, as MRS have said, that importance of being available outside of standard business hours as well. But we also then ensure that people have access through MRS in the times that we're not available. So being a web and phone-based service, we are available statewide, and all of our staff are based in South Australia. Some are based regionally as well. So we have a lot of contact across the sector. So our trained intervention counsellors are available to provide support and intervention, specialising in evidence-based engagement with men, with the safety of women and children central to everything. So facilitating men's access to services, providing intervention at the identified crisis points when men are motivated to address and change their behaviour, adopting a tailored intervention program and provision of interventions suited to the men's individual needs. So following initial phone contact, where men have engaged with our counsellors, longer interventions and supports will be provided to assist men understand their behaviour and make positive changes. So we don't have a perfectly structured this amount of services. It is, that didn't come across correctly, but it is about the needs that are being presented and how we work through those and where those points of contact are needed. So for some people that is a short intervention, for some people that is longer. We do now also operate some virtual group programs that are part of the phone line as such. So every step of the way, though, the safety of women and children associated with the men we're working with is at the top of the priority list. The aim is to reduce, obviously, the likelihood of controlling behaviour escalating to violence and lethal violence. So providing that timely access to intervention programs and support service information is pivotal. While it may be their first formal contact with whether it's the justice system, whether that's not been involved, it's really the first occurrence of harmful behaviour. So referrals to the service can be self-referred or by organisations, obviously with the men's consent, because we don't want to be contacting men who aren't aware of a referral, because that can create additional escalations in behaviour. So, but we really want to recognise and act at the earliest opportunities to prevent further harm and support long-term accountability and safety. We respond to referrals within 24 hours and do our very best. We don't maintain a wait list. We are working to make sure we can engage people at every opportunity, because we know that if someone's at the point of being able to phone and recognising that they're needing services, we don't want to turn them away. So we also recognise that change is rarely a straight line. So some clients may not appear motivated or may be difficult to engage at times. They may have been directed to access some services, perhaps by correctional services or by child protection, we often hear, but our service is voluntary. So it's one of the most powerful drivers of meaningful change, that voluntary engagement. And so when a man chooses to participate, not just because of a court order, but because he recognises something needs to change, the starting point to that is ownership. It doesn't preclude the necessity for some mandated programs, because sometimes that's essential for people reaching the point that we may never seek help voluntarily. So in order to assist in the desistance, intervention does also focus on the development and maintenance of hope. Desistance is an inherently individual process, and so therefore the focus on personal identity and relationships are central to that engagement and the development of social capital. So we acknowledge that genuine recovery and healing from domestic, family and sexual violence must include the transformation of those who've caused harm. While survivors rightly remain the central focus of all responses to violence, we also recognise that long-term safety and justice require meaningful change from those who've used violence, abuse and control. So from the perspective of men who use violence, recovery is not linear. And so healing through this lens involves acknowledgement, accountability, reparation, and internal transformation. So I just also, for the AOD sector, just wanted to note a couple of things briefly. We at AWS have both drug and alcohol services and domestic and family violence services. And so those interventions are different between different practitioners and different skill sets. But one of the things that we must acknowledge is that drugs and alcohol do not cause domestic and family violence. So they can certainly act as an accelerator. They can certainly be part of an escalation in violence, but they themselves do not cause that violence. So we still operate our services from a trauma-informed lens and are able to engage and address those behaviours, as well as in accepting that there's victim stance and a particular sense of what needs to be across those lenses, and the gendered lens as well that NTV have spoken about. You may have seen through the Royal Commission that we had in South Australia over the last year, 18 months, that there has been, that alcohol in particular has explicitly been recognised in the Royal Commission. And so recommendation 128 calls for a progression of the reforms for the Liquor Licensing Act, and so including a minimum 2-hour safety pause, delaying Uber deliveries and things, rapid delivery of alcohol. So that's an intent for a bit of a circuit breaker. It's been a recommendation that has been accepted. So we're hopeful that now that we've gotten through our election, we can start seeing some of those pieces being implemented. But I just really wanted to be clear with everyone that collusion and accountability are really, really important in this space. And it's critical to have those balances of service. We're really keen to work with everyone, happy to talk to different organisations from our frontline staff. We also, in addition to the phone line, can talk to you about, we do have accommodation options for men who are concerned about their behaviour, or people using violence that don't necessarily have to be men or in heterosexual relationships. So rather than victim survivors being displaced and moving from their homes, we can accommodate the person using violence, and through that an intervention, therapeutic intervention as well. And we do deliver a short treatment readiness intervention in the remand centre, which has been a really great opportunity to engage in the first sort of 48 to 72 hours of someone's arrest. And as our legislation continues to change and evolve in relation to domestic and family violence, we are seeing more and more people in the remand centre who are either on breaches or new charges for domestic and family violence. So it's creating an opportunity to introduce some treatment readiness, some psychoeducation, and referral pathways to post-release accommodation. So again, we're very happy to talk more, and I can send through some detail later for Sam. Send out. Thanks.
Excellent. Just trying to unmute myself there. Thanks, Louise. And yeah, congratulations to Oars on such a fantastic program, and Oars being a staple of our drug and alcohol sector, but our community services sector for a very, very long time in South Australia. One of these really great legacy organisations, and delivering a fantastic program again. Thanks to everyone for attending today. If there's any more questions, please feel free to pop them in the Q&A function, and our presenters will be happy to respond. There was a question about the work with interpreters, and Carolyn's put a response to that question in the chat if people are interested in that. There was also a question about certificates of participation for CPD submission. Yes, we can do that. What I might do is send a follow-up email to people who attended today. We'll attach the slides. We'll pop Molly's link in there for you to be able to provide feedback. We'll also pop the link in to join our drug and alcohol community of practice. If you work in the drug and alcohol sector in South Australia, you're invited to join that as well. So are there any more questions or any final comments from any of our presenters? No? Excellent. Now I just thought I was prepared, but now I've lost my link. There we go. I'm just about to pop into the chat the good old evaluation link to a survey telling us what you thought of today's seminar. We'd be really interested in your feedback if you wouldn't mind just taking 1 or 2 minutes following the end of the seminar to just give us some feedback and let us know what you thought of today. So I'm not seeing any other questions come through the Q&A or the chat, just double checking so I don't leave anybody out. All right, last call for any comments from our presenters. Excellent, otherwise I'll just, sorry, go on, Carolyn.
Thank you again for having us here today. Yeah.
No, our pleasure. And I think it was a really good opportunity to bring together some, good synergy between what Oz is doing in South Australia and what's happening nationally as well. And we look forward to the launch of the website as well. Excellent. Great. Well, thank you everyone for coming. We really appreciate your attendance today, and we will be in touch fairly soon.
Sorry, Sam. I think someone's got their hand up.
Oh yeah.
Oh, Sharon. Yeah, because we're in webinar mode.
Sharon?
It's hard to enable your microphone. Are you able to pop your question in the chat?
Oh, I think I can do it actually. Hang on, Sharon. I'll allow you. There you go. Oh, no.
No. This is where our deficit in IT skills are exposed.
I think by the look of things, Molly, you've allowed, but now, Sharon, you need to unmute.
Ah, yes. There we go.
Thank you
Perfect.
so much. Sorry.
Oh.
Yeah, I just was very keen to hear a response to what Lindy Lou was asked, whether there's any potential training available in regional areas for these.
Oh, Lindy Lou, did I miss a question for? Oh, sorry, I saw you. Sorry, Lindy Lou, I missed your question there in the chat just at the end there. No regional trainings on this particular topic planned at this stage, but I definitely recognise the need for such. So we'll continue in our advocacy for resources around that. Any of other presenters aware?
I was going to say, happy to. We've got staff and services regionally, so we've often got people travelling or located regionally. So please, get in touch with us, and we're happy to see what we can organise.
Excellent. I know that Lindy Lou and Sharon are both from Mount Gambier, so
excellent.
Yes, they will definitely.
We can make that happen. Mount Gambier's yes. Well, we'll deal with the fuel, but that's but
we
yes,
might be
get
walking.
in touch. Get in touch. We'll make something happen. Absolutely.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate that.
No problem.
Excellent. Thanks, Sharon and Lindy Lou, and I apologise for missing your question there at the end. All right, thank you everyone for attending today, and we will see you all again very soon. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Sam.